Welcome to the Beyond the Business podcast. We got Chris Tierney with us in the house today. He's from Kansas City, and he's the school founder of Sales Vibe Innovation. He's going to talk about sales, his background in business, as well as school in general. But Chris, how's your day going today?
It's going well. I actually had a pretty successful week. I closed up a deal yesterday that I was really excited about. We got the wire in, and the piece of equipment I sell shipped out today. So everything went really well, and we have a happy buyer and a happy seller.
I want to ask you probably my first question to dive into the show. I just want to know a little bit about you, a little bit of your background. I know that can be a little bit of a longer question. So I just want to ask you, what are you currently doing and what got you into what you're currently doing?
Okay. Well, I've been in sales for 27 years, and I started out in commercial real estate for 13 years. And I really lucked out because I had a job right when I got out of school from Kansas State University. And so I went right into a full-time job from an internship that I had done between my fourth and fifth year of school. And it just so happens that I had a mentor that was one of the hardest workers that I had ever seen. He, to this day, is continuously just working super, super hard, and he taught me a ton. So I was brokering, leasing and selling in industrial property. And I was doing investment properties as well. I did that for about 13 years in commercial real estate. Unfortunately, the market took a major hit, a depression, if you will, in 2009. And that ultimately forced me out of commercial real estate that I truly loved and do to this day. But then I went into medical sales for about 3 years because I had always wanted to do that as well. And it wasn't as, what's the right word? It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I ended up going into business selling printing presses. And so I sell flexographic printing presses that makes prints labels, and we broker the equipment between buyer and seller. And I've been doing that for the duration. So whatever the math is, minus 27 years, that's what I've been doing. And it's been great. I happen to work with one of my best friends who is my boss, and I know the family extremely well. And so that makes it even nicer, being able to communicate. Sometimes I tee him up and he knocks him down, and it's vice versa sometimes. And sometimes I do my deals from beginning to end, but we're a team. And that's one thing that I really love about the position that I'm in right now.
So you've done real estate, you've done medical, you've done this printing thing.
You can just call it capital equipment. I mean, that's the basic industry name of it.
Which one was your favorite? You said the real estate?
Probably commercial real estate. One, it was extremely lucrative. That I can tell you. It is very sensitive with the market, like a lot of industries are, but it was very sensitive on the market. There was a lot of cold calling involved. There was a lot of traveling around the local city because it was predominantly Kansas City based on where we were targeting our customers. But it was probably commercial real estate. I had a really keen eye for it, and I still do to this day. And I fully intend at some point to start investing in real estate on my own.
And how long? So obviously you were doing these different sales jobs. How long would you say that it took you to learn sales, or you just always learning?
Fortunately, I had a fantastic mentor. So before I got my real estate license and really got my wings into the brokering of real estate, my mentor just continuously would sit down with me and feed me full of information. He would listen to my phone calls. I would listen to his phone calls. And all in all, I mean, I can't say that I've ever really stopped learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as getting my feet wet and really getting into it, I would say it took a good solid couple years before I was really comfortable being on the phone and taking control of the transaction. I would say about, I mean, 2 years would be safe to say. But again, that's because I had a really good mentor. So
So 2 years with a good mentor. So a lot longer, probably, if you didn't have one.
for sure, absolutely, I would have been learning everything on my own and probably would have been in a different industry, quite frankly. So my recommendation for anybody out there in sales or breaking into sales is to make sure that you have somebody that you can fall under that can teach you the ropes when you first get into it, because it'll really, really be helpful for you. And honestly, that's why I ended up developing the community that I have in school.
One of the best performing podcasts of my show is a beginner sales podcast as well. Because I built my show for beginning entrepreneurs, beginning businessmen, people that are just graduating high school, trying to get into entrepreneurship. And I
Sure.
found there's a lot of information out there, but there's not a lot of guidance of like, hey, let's break it down on a super simple level that's understandable. Because there's like a gap between the stuff you learn in school and the stuff you like learn in the real world business world. As at least what I've
Absolutely.
seen.
No doubt about it. And I mean, college is a good thing. So don't get me wrong that I'm against schooling. I mean, I went to school myself. So,
Mhm.
however, the more and more we get into the industries on technology and so forth, the more I am seeing a lot less people taking their degree and using that as leverage to get a job, because a lot of people are starting up their own businesses. And sales is a great area for an entry point to not only break into and learn about, but to also have a very, very lucrative future. Because I mean, you can make quite a bit of money in sales if you're doing it properly.
And I found it's like the first rung for business. Like those businessmen that don't know sales aren't very successful. But as long as you know sales, your business will do fine, even if it's like not fully fleshed out.
Absolutely. And you got to start with the fundamentals. It all comes down to the fundamentals, just like anything. Whether it's throwing a baseball or swinging a golf club or talking on the phone, you got to start with the fundamentals and know what you're doing in order to be successful at it, for sure.
I love that. I love that. I love that. So obviously, when you got into sales was 27 years ago, right?
Yes, sir.
When it comes to the world or the conversation around sales, I'm pretty sure that it's probably shifted from where it was to where it is now. How's the conversation around sales changed or the culture around it?
Well, that's a great question, because not only has it shifted since I was a rookie, but it has shifted because of COVID as well.
Mhm.
So that made it even more. But to answer your question, when when I was my senior year in college, which would have been 96, 97, I mean, internet was just barely even started. I didn't even have a cell phone in 95, I think. And I tried to go as long as I could without a cell phone. I'll never forget it. I finally got a cell phone. And then when I graduated from college and went into my first year in business, email was the big thing. And so actually fax was too. And I was doing broadcast fax marketing faxes. I was sitting there just feeding the machine with marketing materials to like literally 200 at a 200 different faxes. And I would just stand there in front of the fax machine and do that. So with the way things have shifted, it has made it so much more easier to get a lot of marketing done at one time. And LinkedIn is obviously a big way of doing it. TikTok, Instagram, all the social medias now, you can blanket it out to millions of people at one time. And you can even zoom in on particular industries that you need to zoom in on. And so that is the biggest shift. And it also has made it so much more convenient as a salesperson. So as long as you know the fundamentals, you are solid, because then you can take off with whatever industry that you're in. So long as you know your product, you can market. Marketing is one of the easiest things to do. And so so long as you believe in your product and you know your product and you know how to talk to the customer and treat them right and be trustworthy and genuine about it, then to answer your question, the biggest difference is the marketing component. That's the short answer.
Because you need marketing to get sales and leads, right?
For sure. Absolutely. Yep.
When it came to my background a little bit, I was in the insurance space for a bit. That was my second job in sales. And before COVID, it was all in person. You stop at their house. You can only do business on their home, on their couch. And then COVID happened. It was like, don't do it in their house ever. Just do it on Zoom. And even after COVID was away, it's quicker to just do it on Zoom. Just do it on Zoom. Is that how sales shifted for you because of COVID, or was it different because of COVID?
Because of COVID, it definitely went to a lot of video. Zoom became big. All these video platforms became huge. And that is a big thing, because the industry that I'm in, typically the customer will go out pre-COVID and look at the machine that I'm trying to sell, inspect it, touch it, watch it run. Now, the seller of the equipment can do a walk around on FaceTime and show them how it's running. They missed the touching component, but that's not really that big of a deal. As long as the machine's running and they can see it running and they can ask questions to the seller directly versus through me, that goes a super long ways.
Okay, so I know we had some questions from my community. We had some questions about sales. We had questions about your school community. Yep. So maybe we'll just mix up. We'll talk a little bit about what is Sales Vibe Innovation. Why do you start on Skool?
So Sales Vibe Innovations is kind of a dream of mine for many reasons. First of all, the reason why I wanted to do it was because of my mentorship that I had when I first started in sales. And I've always been the kind of person where I like to give back what was given to me. Mm-hmm. And so this is one of the things, or one of the ways that I'm giving back to those that are either stuck in sales or looking to break into sales and get them to thrive and get them on their feet to be able to go out and make commissions and make money in any sales industry, not just the industry or the three industries I was in, but all of them, because they're all fairly relative when it comes to the fundamentals of sales. And then obviously, the more into it you get, the more specific questions you're going to have to learn. But that is really what made me get into Sales Vibe Innovations in the school community. And I'm a firm believer in the school community, because school is just, it's like, I guess the way I'd put it is it's like a Facebook with your own profile on it. And do we pay for that profile? Yes, but I'm happy to do that. And I went out and spent some pretty good money in creating my courses just to be able to give back to those that need the help in sales. And starting out with the fundamentals is the absolute biggest. And then the collaboration in the message boards and the short videos that I provide dive a little bit further and further into the specifics in sales or any industry that anybody has questions on.
Sales being similar to a lot of other industries, there's a lot of fundamentals. There's a lot of things people mess up on starting out. What do you think are the main, beginning sales people, the main mistakes that they make?
Their voice. Honestly, if you are not confident with your voice, the person on the other line or on the other side of the monitor is going to be skeptical. So I think it's extremely important to learn your voice right out of the gates. And that's one of the first things my mentor taught me is not necessarily being monotone. I mean, having some pitch in your voice, some excitement, but at the same time, keeping your composure and being confident in your pitch. That is probably the number one thing. The number two thing is going to be accepting failures. Accepting failures is part of the business that you have to learn. If you cannot overcome failure, you are not going to survive in sales. It's as simple as that. So definitely the overcoming of the failure is something that you have to know right out of the gate.
And how, obviously, you had a good mentor that showed you, but how do you currently accept failure?
Well, I actually just did a post on my school community today about that. It was either today or yesterday. Well, you're going to have to really step outside of the box and think. You're just going to have to think outside of the box. So how do you overcome failures? You're going to have to, one, go into it accepting the fact that it's going to happen. Okay. But you also have to understand that the more failures that happen to you, you're that much closer to success. So you have to keep that in mind as you are getting the no's. You're one step closer to getting a yes. And in the end result of what it feels like when you get a transaction done is so like, it's exhilarating. I mean, when you get a deal done, you celebrate, and then you move on to the next deal. Okay. Mm-hmm. Or you're working multiple deals at one time. So you need to think about the end result when you're trying to overcome that failure. And as difficult as it is, sales can be a numbers game. So you have to understand it can be a numbers game. So you need to keep going, and you will eventually hit success. Absolutely. You have to be extremely resilient. And if you aren't resilient, you're going to have a very difficult time overcoming failure. So there's a lot of psychology to it, but at the same time, that's one of the things that I really try and hit home on my school community. So a lot of it is motivation, keeping people like pumped and going, and keeping your foot on the gas pedal. But that's one aspect of my community that I really try and drive in.
I know a little bit of mine started back in the insurance space. They said it was a numbers game.
Yeah.
And you just fundamentally believe that sales is just numbers game?
No, actually, you're right, because that is a broad term. Okay. There are ways to approach leads in a very smart manner. And in those leads, you have what's called a pipeline sheet. Okay. And my pipeline sheet consists of a top half and a bottom half. Top half is my 90% and greater that I think is going to close. Mm-hmm. And my bottom half is ranked 1 through 10. Actually, I don't even rank it 1 through 5. 5 and under are off. They're off the sheet. So I do 6 and up. 6 being like, they're worthy of a follow-up. Mm-hmm. 7, they're lukewarm. 8, we got ourselves a potential deal here. And then 9, they're about ready to move up to my top notch to where I'm going to close them. And so breaking down your leads is a huge thing. Now, how do you get to those leads? And how you get to those leads is you break down, obviously, you break it down in a way where you target your most ideal demographic audience. Okay. Then you take that demographic audience and you blanket it out in your marketing. Mm-hmm. And then you follow up by building up a CRM system. If you don't have a CRM system, you are hosed, because there's really no other way to track who you've called, who you haven't called, and then, who you need to follow up with. And it's very smart that you build it up in a CRM system, because If you start building up to 3,000 potential customers that you've either talked to in the past that or at least in the industry that might have a need down the road, well, then you should be touching at least those customers of 3,000 at least 2 or 3 times per year or each quarter. And that way you'll start building up your sales business and get phone calls back and starting to be able to build your pipeline sheet and so forth. And so that's really how I would approach the leads. And that's really what I meant by the numbers game, or with the legitimate leads. You know what I'm saying? And not just going to a phone book and just going, I'm going to call this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I know with some questions from my community and from different communities on Skool. They wanted to know, first off, you talked about follow-up, so I guess we'll start there. How do you follow up without acting desperate? Or what's your tactic with the follow-up?
Well, anymore, it's something that I need to kind of dive back into and really put it in terms where other people will understand it, because now it's just kind of an instinctive thing for me, to where I really don't think about it anymore. I just do it. So if I know somebody is really hot on a lead and has expressed a strong interest, I will obviously call them. If I get their voicemail, I'll leave a voicemail, and then I'll send them an email just as, hey, I tried reaching out to you. When you get an opportunity, can you give me a call, or can we set up a time that's convenient for you? That's one way of following up. Another way of following up, if somebody's just not flat calling you back, I do have a 3-strike rule. And the 3-strike rule is call once, leave a message, call second time, typically 2-3 days later, and then call them on a Monday. If they aren't calling me back, they ain't interested, and they ain't going to make the pipeline sheet either. I move on to the next one. And so that's really how I approach most of my follow-ups, quite frankly.
And how do you, okay, so that makes sense. So they were also wondering, how do you approach new people?
Okay, so when you're calling a customer for the first time and you're just calling them cold out of the blue, first of all, you need to have all of your information in front of you, and you need to have their website pulled up in front of you. And the reason why you want to have their website pulled up in front of you, and I actually went over this as well in the Skool community, but you want to impress them of what you know about their company. If you go into it and be like, hey, I know you've been in business for 32 years, that's fantastic. You're a second generation family owned business. That's awesome. Just that right there will grab their attention. Okay. And so the more you know about their company, what kind of equipment or whatever you're trying to pitch them, whatever competing product they might have of what you're trying to pitch them, you definitely want to be armed with that information, because he'll be like, wow, we have a blah, 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 I mean, that's great. I mean, we do have that XYZ and you've got the ABC, and okay, so you have my attention, and what advantages does your product have over mine? And you better be able to answer that question, because first impression is the last impression when it comes to cold calling. And that right there, I would have to say would be very important. Secondly, obviously, is knowing your product inside and out. And if you don't know your product inside and out, they're going to know it. I mean, I've been there and I've done that. I've been in many cold calls where the guy's like, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, thanks, boom, never hear back from them. Versus grabbing their attention. And honestly, this comes with just good old-fashioned practice and making more phone calls, or making more video calls, or setting up appointments, or doing in-person visits. It takes practice. I mean, you can only teach people so much. So they're either going to grasp it or they aren't. And they're either going to be semi-natural at it or they aren't. But the key thing, I think, on top of everything else that I said, is making sure that you're yourself. You have to be genuine. You can't have a major like Hey, my name's Chris Tierney. How you doing today? I'm here to talk to you about, it's got to be more like, hey, John, how you doing today? I wanted to talk to you about our products that I think you might be really interested in because it is very comparable to what you're currently utilizing. And I'm looking at your website right now. I know you've been in business for 32 years, and it's extremely impressive that you're on a second generation in your family. I mean, that's pretty cool. I also noticed, this and that and this and that and this and that. And here's some of the advantages about our products compared to what you're currently utilizing. And, I typically don't like to touch on price until they ask you, or it's the last part of the conversation. You don't want them thinking about price right out of the gates. You want them thinking about what your product is going to do better than the product that they currently have. So that's kind of the cold calling first time call. Or sometimes you respect their time and be like, look, I realize now may not be a very good time for you. Do you have some time? I'm like, Chris, I'm really tied up right now. I'm like, I understand completely that you're busy. Is there a better time that we could set up? And he'll be like, well, what are you calling about? And then you can go into your little spiel and be like, look, would 10 o'clock on Wednesday work better for you? So if you leave it open-ended, like what times works best for you, he'll just be like, I'll get back to you on it. And you'll never hear from him again. So try and go in with like, would 10 o'clock work for you well on Wednesday? That would be another way of doing it.
So prior to the get-go, is there anything else you'd want to share with the audience? Any more insight?
Gosh,
sales.
That's a like a really long answer there. But yeah, there's a lot of other things that I want a lot of people out there that are stuck in sales that need to get over the hump. There's a lot of other topics. I would just honestly encourage anybody and everybody to join my school community at Sales Vibe Innovations. I'm really looking to make this community a number one sales community on Skool. And that's a very, very big task. But at the same time, I do think it's realistic because I am a firm believer in Skool. And I'm doing everything that I can to get people to come into my community to where we can dive into different topics that I can teach or even get advice from. Because I mean, I by no means have all the answers. I'm looking for advice too, especially with some of these young guns that are privy to all these high tech things that they could teach me. And so with that, really just coming into my community is probably one of the biggest things that I'm pushing here and that I'm encouraging everybody to do. So as far as sales advice, I think I gave you enough advice thus far because I could keep talking for a long time.
So when it comes to learning sales, would you recommend someone start a business to learn sales or just get a job to learn sales? Or is it just not black and white?
Well, my honest opinion is most people that are breaking into sales need to have some carry, okay, to be able to pay the bills. So in an ideal world, if you can find a position, one with a mentor that can teach you, and then secondly, with a small base salary and not going into 100% commission, that is what I'd recommend. If you are very confident in starting up your own business, knowing, and it's got very low overhead, extremely low overhead, then that would be a route. But going into sales cold is extremely difficult because you're diving into a sales industry that you don't know a lot about selling. You may know a lot about the product, but you still have to know how to talk to the customers. And so my advice would be to find a mentor and start with a small base salary where commissions are capable, and definitely an industry that you love. Because if you don't love it, you ain't going to excel at it. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I would recommend. But again, that's an ideal world. It doesn't always happen like that.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't recommend 100% commission unless you have money backed up behind you.
Okay. And my next question is, how is sales? So obviously I found that sales and personal development are pretty much in the same. Like as you have to personal develop in order to grow in sales. How has sales improved you as a person or grown you in your own personal development journey?
Well, it's definitely had its ups and downs. You can ask my wife because she's like, I'm married to a salesman, and she's a school teacher. So she's used to balanced structure. You know what I'm saying? And in my world, it's a roller coaster with ups and definitely downs. But sales has built me into a thick-skinned individual where I can take a lot of criticism and brush it off my shoulder. I can take a lot of no's and then try and twist it around to a yes, for their benefit. I mean, strictly for their benefit, not because I'm trying to talk them into a bad deal, because I'm trying to help them. And so I would say it's built me into, and I've always been a pretty tough guy, which I think is one of the reasons why I am where I am in sales and have been in it for 27 years. But it's definitely thickened my skin and made me a tougher individual with a lot of heart. But it's definitely it's not easy. It's a grind.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah,
for your
man.
realness, for bringing some sales knowledge to the community, to the podcast, to the show. I want to ask you for the final question. What would be your millionaire insight from the last 10 years or your biggest takeaway from your journey?
It's not going to be money. Okay.
Okay.
Money follows. What it's going to be is, from the last 10 years, there's people that you can trust in business and there's people that you can't trust in business. And my biggest thing that I haven't changed is being genuine and making sure that the customer wins, that all party wins, not just you. Okay. And there's a lot of people out there that are doing shady stuff, and it bothers me. If it's my competitors, well, it doesn't really bother me because the customers will come to me. But you burn bridges out there and you will fail. You may make a lot of money temporarily, but you in the long run will fail. So being genuine and making sure that you are very cautious and that all parties win.
Thank you for that admonition, and thank you for your insight today, Chris.
Well, Braden, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for the opportunity of letting me come on here.
100%.